What's up, guys? Kurt, you here from actingcareercenter.com. Today, I just wanted to give you a quick tip about why every single audition is a win, even if you don't book it. Now, before we get into that topic, because we're talking about auditions, I just want to say if you are new to my channel, if you haven't downloaded my free 10-step audition preparation guide yet, you can get it from that link right up there. I call it my audition cheat sheet, and it's my way of helping you prepare for your auditions so that they can be the best that they can possibly be, and that can definitely help you in preparing for auditions like what we're talking about today. So why is every audition a win even if you don't book it? Well, for a couple of reasons. Number one, every audition is a win because of, and I've talked about this before, how competitive this industry is. This is probably the most competitive profession in the world, acting. And simply because of the sheer numbers, I don't know any other job where there are thousands of people competing for a single job. And that happens in the acting world all the time. For any role in a movie or a TV show, there are sometimes thousands of people that are being submitted just to get auditions. And casting directors don't have time to watch thousands of auditions for every single role, so oftentimes they can only extend audition invitations to maybe 50 or 100. Usually less than 10% of the people who request an audition are given one simply because of the numbers. They just don't have the time. So that's why if you're in that less than 10% of people that receive an audition, then that's a huge win, right? You are already ahead of the game if you get an audition at all. Number two, another reason why every audition is a win, even if you don't book it, is because every time you audition, it's an opportunity to build a relationship. It's an opportunity to build trust from the person who is watching your audition, whether that's your agent or a casting director or a producer or a director or anybody in the industry who's watching your audition. You are building that relationship every time they see you on camera. And then even if you don't book that particular job, you're staying top of mind for all of those people every time that they see you. I like to think about auditions kind of like a commercial. It's a commercial for your acting ability. And every time that commercial plays, meaning every time you audition and every time someone sees it, you stay top of mind. It's kind of like in our own lives, right? The more that we see a commercial for a product or a store or something like that, we tend to think about that more. And then in our everyday lives, if we see that brand that we've seen a commercial for over and over again, we tend to trust more because we've seen it more in the commercials or on TV or whatever it may be. So for your auditions, the more that you do it, even if you don't book, the more that they see you, you're building that relationship, you're building that trust between you. A great example is the show I'm currently working on right now. So earlier this year, in 2021, I auditioned for a pilot for one of the lead characters, one of the series regulars on this pilot for a television show. I didn't end up getting it, but I got fairly close, meaning I was pinned for the role. They were checking my availability. I was actually pretty excited that I was going to get this role, but then ultimately I didn't get it. It went to somebody else, right? And sure, I was bummed about it for a little bit, but I also understood that once this pilot got picked up, if it got picked up, which it did, if the show got picked up and they started shooting the rest of the show, then I was pretty confident that I would get more auditions for this show. Why? Because if my audition was good enough to get to the point where the casting directors and the producers thought that I should be pinned for it and I was in their top group, their top choices, ultimately it went to somebody else. But I knew that now that they're shooting the rest of the show, they would probably keep me in mind for other roles on the show, which is exactly what happened. And now I'm currently working on that show because they are now shooting the show, and I got another audition as I thought I would, simply because when I auditioned for it earlier this year and I didn't book it, but I built that relationship with the casting directors and the director and the producers so that now they gave me another audition, I booked that role, and I'm currently working on the show. I had a very similar story happen to me on Cobra Kai. I've told this story before, but if you haven't heard it, when I auditioned for the show Cobra Kai, I think I auditioned 2 or 3 times, and I didn't book any of those initial auditions. And then later on, they offered me a role that ended up being the character of George, who happens to appear a couple times in season 1 and then maybe in upcoming episodes. But anyway, the point is that those first few auditions, I didn't end up booking them, but they were all wins because they continued to build my relationship with the casting directors of the show and the producers of the show and the directors. And on my first day that I worked as the character of George on the show, one of the producers told me, he said, "Hey, we really loved your previous auditions. You just didn't necessarily fit those characters. And that's why we offered you this role of George, because we had seen those previous auditions of yours and we really wanted to get you on this show." So next time you get an audition, first of all, celebrate the audition itself. And then second of all, I hope you book it, for one. But if you don't get so down on yourself. Understand that simply getting that audition and doing it was a win. And the fact that you sent that audition in and they saw you and they watched your acting ability, that's a huge plus because you're building that relationship. And think about it as the stepping stone to your next audition, the stepping stone to your next booking. Just because you didn't book that particular audition, it's not a big deal because you are that much closer to booking your next one.
All right, I didn't have time to finish this video in my trailer, so we are finishing it up here at home. We're talking about how every audition is a win, right? And I showed you a couple examples from my own acting career. Now I want to take it a step further and talk about how you also shouldn't turn down auditions simply because you feel like you don't fit the role. And this happens all the time in the actor's career. For example, you may get an audition at some point where the description of the character is totally different than who you actually are. Maybe it says the age is 40s or 50s and you're only in your 20s or 30s. Or maybe it's just a different ethnicity than you, or even a different gender than you. This happens all the time. And a lot of novice actors, they'll look at it and they'll say, well, why am I getting this audition? Why would my agent send me this audition? Or why would the casting director send me this audition? I'm not 45, or I'm not African American, or I'm not Caucasian, or whatever, right? This could happen to you. And sometimes actors would just say, well, I'm not going to audition for this because I'm never going to get it because I don't fit this character. Here's a reason why you should. Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, you don't know what's going behind the scenes. When I say you, I mean all of us actors, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes from the casting standpoint. What the casting directors, the information that they currently have may not be the current information that's on the casting breakdown or the character description. What happens a lot is that the character description may have been written when the script was originally written. However, as they moved along in the casting process, sometimes those things change. For example, sometimes the casting directors and the director and the producers will get together and they'll decide, well, you know what, this character was originally written for someone in their 40s or 50s. However, it totally would make sense if that character was in their 20s or 30s as well. So let's open it up to a wider pool of actors. And then they extend auditions to other people, but they may not have had time to update that character description that gets sent out. So you look at it and you're thinking you got that audition by mistake, but in actuality, they sent it to you on purpose. There were decisions that were made after the fact to decide to open up the audition to a wider pool of actors. This has happened to me multiple times. I've gotten auditions for roles that were written for someone in their 60s or 70s, and I don't look like I'm 60. Hopefully I don't look like I'm 60. And I auditioned for it anyway, and then I come to find out that it was because they decided to open up the role to someone a little bit younger, and I ended up booking the role. I've also auditioned for roles that were originally written for a Caucasian character, but then they decided, well, this character doesn't necessarily need to be Caucasian, so they open it up to people of other ethnicities as well. So I auditioned for it, even though the description of the character never changed. The casting directors and producers made that decision after the fact. Okay, so that's a reason why you should always audition anyway, even though you feel like you may not fit the description of the character when it comes to you. Another reason why you should audition anyway, even if you feel like you don't fit the description, is exactly what we were talking about before, right? Where every audition is an opportunity for you to show them your work, show them your acting ability. And just because you don't book that particular role doesn't mean that you may not book future roles. And sometimes what they do with auditions is that they send out one audition for one character and they use that to cast multiple roles. Let's say, for example, that they want to cast a few different customers at a store, but they maybe only will send out one audition of one role and have everybody read for that role, and they would use that audition to cast multiple different people. And because of that, they will cast a variety of actors, but maybe that role description is only of one particular type of customer. Hopefully that makes sense. And this happens all the time as well, and it's happened to me in my career too. So those are a couple reasons why you should never turn down an audition simply because you feel like you don't fit that character description, because you never know from the casting standpoint exactly why they're giving you that audition. So always take that opportunity to show them your work no matter what. All right, so that's it for this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, keep practicing, keep learning, and I hope to see you on set one day.